All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Take Back My Brain. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Dr. Tara Perry, and she is amazing. She was just telling me her story before we got started here, and I cannot wait to dive into some things here. She is, oh gosh, a trauma specialist. She's an acupuncturist and so much more, and she has quite the story. So, Dr. Tara, thank you so much for being on the Take Back My Brain podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Great to be here with you.
Yes, absolutely. You have a practice called Next Level Healing, correct?
So my podcast is called Next Level Healing.
Okay,
Yep. My process is actually called Core Trauma Transformation.
awesome. So kind of delve into that a little bit. Like, I really want to know kind of how you got there to start with, and then, why did you dive off into this path? Because it's amazing.
So we'll do the ultra Reader's Digest version.
Sounds good.
I've always been into holistic medicine. My dad was on the board of the Price Pottenger Foundation. It was
Oh,
the oldest, yeah.
mhm.
Since you're in nutrition, you know all
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Anybody that's in the nutritional world, they're like, wow, that's really cool. Because then they thought Twinkies was a vitamin, right?
Right,
Um,
exactly. Bryce
so
Pottinger
my,
just like rocked the world.
I know we had no white flour and no white sugar in my household, and people just thought that was incredibly weird. But I'm so grateful because we now know that that stuff is not great for your
Right.
system. It's not great for much of anything. And the more we get into holistic foods, the better our body can respond and behave like it's designed to. Our
Mhm.
brains are also designed to help us if we get out of
Yes.
the way and stop, poisoning it with what there is to poison it out there.
Mhm.
Um, and that's physical, that's nutritional, and that's also mental and emotional. So I was in the entertainment business briefly. I know that's way back decades ago, but I called up my homeopath one day and I said, "What do I do if I want to do what you do?" Because it wasn't satisfying to my soul to be working
Mhm.
in that environment. So when he told me, it's like God parted the clouds and said, "This is what you're going to go do." And so for 25 years, I had a practice in acupuncture and nutritional medicine in Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and Belmont Shore. I
Wow.
taught at UCLA and Emperor's College. And I love what that does for people. It was so wonderful to help people avoid surgeries and medications that they didn't want to be on and honestly
Mhm.
did not serve them in the long term, as you know.
Right.
Um, and of course, that has a time and a place, but it's a lot more limited than it typically is used for. So then I found that, thank God, before COVID, that I'm very good at helping people find what's stuck in their subconscious mind. So that's
Yeah.
usually some form of anxiety, stress, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, anger, whatever it is, and pulling that out of there. The brain wants to heal, it wants to help
Right.
you, but I say people are like an iPhone 14 operating on iPhone 4 technology.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not your fault. You just weren't born with an owner's manual to your mind. But once you get in touch with that thing, it doesn't matter what happens to us. It matters the interpretation that we make about ourselves, the world, and other people. That's the thing that hurts us. Two
Right.
people can go through the same circumstance, and one of them will come out, super powerful. The other person will be damaged for the rest of their life. It's only because of the interpretation that they laid on themselves, the world, and the other people that ends up hurting them. It's that internal dialogue that really hurts us.
Right. For sure.
So there's an interview I did with Chris Niebauer, and he wrote "No Self, No Problem," and we actually went into the science of what happens when the corpus callosum is severed. That's the right and left, the
Mhm.
between the right and left hemispheres. And this crazy thing, our left brain, which is the one that compartmentalizes, it's the language, it makes sense of the world in an abstract sense. Guess what that does when it doesn't know the answer to something?
It freaks out. I don't
It
know.
makes stuff up.
It makes stuff up. Okay, so it's like a lie
That's
going on in your own brain.
Well, it wants to make
Right.
sense of life, and like
Okay.
our brains want to make sense of things, and it has this urgent need to do so. But if it doesn't know the answer, it just makes something up because it would rather have a fake answer than one that's, I don't know what's going on. And then there's this other woman who I'm interviewing beginning of next month, Jill Bolte Taylor. She's the one that had the stroke of her whole left hemisphere. Guess what we are without that portion of our brain?
I have no idea.
We're blissed out. We're happy. We don't know where our bodies stop and the rest of the universe starts.
Really?
Fascinating. Yeah. So the suffering really is in the left hemisphere. And
Okay.
that part of our brain that makes sense of the world for us.
Uh-huh.
So useful. I mean, the only problem with being a totally right hemisphered person, yes, you're living in bliss, you're living in happiness. You don't know where you start and the rest of the world starts, but you can't function in 3D. You can't have a schedule. You can't,
Right.
balance a checkbook. You can't do all those abstract things that are really useful in three-dimensional reality.
Hmm.
So the trick is really to balance the brain. She's got a wonderful book called Whole Brain Living,
Okay.
and it's getting familiar with those different sections of your brain, what their mission is, and then learning how to balance them.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and the beauty of what I do is that I help people bypass the conscious mind because that 5 to 10% of our conscious brain is a very small portion of our brain. The other 90 to 95% is our subconscious mind, and it's really hard to solve a problem that's in the subconscious mind with the conscious mind.
Right. Right. So going back to your interpretation, like you said, we've got these internal dialogues going on depending on what's going on in either half of the brain. So obviously the corpus callosum is very important,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, can, aside from doing the experiment, like severing it and separating the halves of the brain, is there an emotional severing that can happen in that area, that creates a different internal dialogue for us?
Well, we don't really want to sever it, but what we want to do, and this is Joel Bolte Taylor's work, we want to identify what those portions. It's like having a team.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want the members of the team fighting against each other, which our brain has a tendency to do.
Mm-hmm.
A part of our brain wants to, skip work and go play for the day, and that's great. That's great to have that emotion and that thought and that playfulness and that fun and that be here now type of personality. But another part of the brain wants to make sure that we don't miss a day at work and we have a perfect record and
Right.
get great grades at school. And then there's the thinking portion of both brains, and then there's the emotional portion of both brains. So it's like four different characters, and we don't want to alienate any of them. We want to recognize that each of them has an important role. I mean, even the fearful brain, that's that reptilian brain that's afraid of everything and doesn't want to do anything new, it's served a purpose over tens of thousands of years for humanity because it was designed to keep us safe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little problematic in present day reality because so many people are firing and wiring a fear response, even though there's no
Right.
danger.
Right.
So overwhelmingly, people are living in some type of fight or flight, and they don't know how to dial it back. And the reason I've had really good success with my clients and helping them dial that back is because, again, I'm bypassing the conscious mind. I'm going into that subconscious mind where the conscious mind processes 40 bits of information per second.
Okay.
The subconscious mind is processing 40 million bits per second.
Wow, that's a vast difference.
Huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are you tapping into the subconscious mind then? Like, how do we get those two halves of the brain to be in harmony with each other when there's this disharmony has been created? But I guess before you answer that question, what are things that can disconnect those two to create that disharmony in the brain? Does that make sense?
So
You would
when
have to
we
go to the subconscious to fix it.
Yeah. So when the members of the team are pointing the finger and blaming and shaming, like, gosh, I hate, you hear this, we all hear this in our own brains until we sort of evolve to the point where we go, wait a minute, I don't want this war going inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
But any type of self-shaming, self-blaming, and again, it's not your fault. You weren't born with an owner's manual to your blame brain. People pick up shame and blame and that finger pointing and all that angst early on in life. They either didn't have parents that modeled better behavior for them. They didn't, take courses that allowed them to learn better
Mm-hmm.
behavior. They didn't hang around other people that showed better behavior. So, none of this is anybody's fault. Once you can see there's a better way to live and you have better examples, whether they're parents, teachers, mentors, whatever, then, it's kind of natural to gravitate towards this way of being because it's more balanced, it's more blissful, it's more happy, it's more successful. I mean, once you go down this road and you start to balance your brain and whether it's meditation or cold therapy like Wim Hof does, or breath work like also Wim Hof or Leland Holgate or any of these people are doing. and you can also, martial arts is another great way. Exercise is a great way. But whatever you're doing, do you just keep upping your level of functioning in the world? You feel better and you start to function better and interact with other people better. So it's a multifaceted thing. I hope I
Okay.
answered your question. I know I went off on a little tangent there.
No, that's okay. I was just, yeah, no, you definitely answered the question. Is there like, what you're eating, your exercise habits, can that create the disruption as well? Just like some basic foundational stuff other than, the
I'm so
environment you
glad you
came
asked me
from.
this question. Are we on video as well or just audio?
Yeah, no, we're on video too.
Okay, great. So this is my favorite picture. This is actually from a book. Donna Gates, I believe, is her name. She writes on
Oh yeah.
the microbiome.
Yep.
But this poor camel. It's like, well, how do we have better health? You got to take the packs off the camel's back.
Correct.
So whatever those packs are for that person, is it environmental toxins? Is it stress? Is it lack of self-love? Is it toxic people around you? Toxic family members? Yeah, it's a whole range of things. So when I'm working one-on-one with somebody, it's like finding, what are those packs, and then triaging, which are the most important
Hmm.
ones to take off first. So whichever the ones are the heaviest that are crushing you the most, you want to debug those and get those out of your world.
Right.
Self-talk is really critical because so many of us have thought tracks that we're not even aware are playing.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
the well-known adage: if you want better results, if you want better answers, you got to ask better questions.
Yeah.
So if your question in the morning is why am I so bad at meeting people, or why do I perform so badly at work, your brain goes and finds the answer to that.
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
And that applies to so many things. And so you want to build the question so that you're already winning. Like, gosh, why do people like me so much? Gosh, why do I just keep getting healthier and healthier? Your brain is going to go find the answer to that. So you want to ask better
Mhm.
questions. You want
No,
to
that's,
you want
yeah.
to build your success into it's gee, how come I just start, why do I feel better each and every day? Your brain's going to go, oh, well, because you're doing this and you're doing this and you're talking to this person and you're reading this book. Your brain will come up with the answer.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay. So now we've established that. So how do we get the two halves to talk? What do you do?
So it's helpful to know what the portions of your brain want.
Okay.
So you have the right brain, which is your, I'm be here now, in the present moment, happy, blissful. And then you've got the other one, which is the planning, organizing. And then you've got in both of those hemispheres of the brain, you've got the emotional component, and then you've got the logical component.
Okay.
So it's basically just recognizing who the members of the team are, and then rather than having them fight against each other and point the finger and blame each other, they work together. Like they acknowledge, if you're running a business, and you've got team members, you don't want those team members fighting. You want to acknowledge, okay, Sally's really good at doing the accounting and the bookkeeping. Joe's really good at it, going out and meeting new people and generating new business. Earl's really good at keeping the building, in shape so that it's pretty and people like to come and visit. Everybody's got a different job,
Right.
but nobody's better or worse than anybody. They're all needed. Or, like the portions of an airplane, you need the wings, you need the engine, you need the windshield, you need all, the wheels. So
Hmm.
rather than shaming and blaming, when I have people filling out my intake, there's a whole checklist of thought tracks in there so that people can start to go, oh, I didn't even realize this, but I have this thought going on all the time that isn't serving me, that's hurting me.
Sure. Sure. That
So
makes
step
sense.
number one is to be aware of what the job is of those different sections, and what the thought tracks are that are not serving you.
Hmm.
And then turn it around so it's like, oh, okay, it's okay for me to take a vacation, because we all know that you've got to sharpen the saw if you want to have
Right.
a good brain that's functional. So that includes taking a little bit of me time, taking family time. You want balance in your life.
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, and then it's also important to, do your taxes and uh,
Do
do
all
all
the
that,
important details so you
do
don't
all
lose all
that
the money.
stuff that needs doing so that,
Yeah.
the reality doesn't come crashing down around you. Um, so it's balance, and it's about recognizing those different areas in the brain.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. So then once you do that, then what's next?
So when I'm working one-on-one with somebody, so the benefit of this conversation is I can give people a whole bunch of tools that they can
Yeah.
implement on their own, like the Jill Bolte Taylor book, like the Wim Hof breathing, like meditation. I am a big fan of Joe Dispenza's work. You can go on his
You right.
website and get his Advanced Progressive Bundle and learn how your brain works. That's such a blessing when people are working with me because they already know how their brain works. If somebody wants to do one-on-one work, I ask them, what are the emotions that you're rubbing up against all the time that are
Yeah.
frustrating? What is your experience of life? Sometimes people are so damaged emotionally, they're like, I'm numb. I
Oh,
can't feel
sure.
anything. So
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. I don't need them to know how to solve the problem. I just need them to, it's like they're sitting in a movie theater. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? What is your experience of life? And then, what is it that you don't like? And then give me three feelings. I have them describe where is it in your body? If it had a temperature, what would it be? Is it empty? Is it electrical? If it had a color, what would it be? So just really get familiar with
Yeah.
that state of being that you don't like, and then wave a magic wand, it's gone. What are three feelings that you'd give anything to experience on a daily basis? Typically those answers are things like peace,
Mm-hmm.
bliss, joy, happiness.
Right.
I've had people that I worked with that came to me for sleep problems, and in 3 sessions they had been through regular sleep therapy. It didn't help them. In 3 sessions they're sleeping beautifully throughout the night, but they're also experiencing bliss and had never done that in their entire life. I think our natural state is bliss and happiness, and
Yeah, absolutely.
it's only because of the filters that got placed on us from stress, trauma, whatever happens. If you're a human being on planet Earth, probably, just the birthing process is traumatic.
It's traumatic. Yes.
And if you look at Stanislav Grof's work, and he's another great breath guy, he's the one that birthed holotropic breath work. And he facilitated 35,000 of these in his career, and he's a full-on psychiatrist. So he
Mm-hmm.
was in a very good position to document the benefits of breath work. But if you're a human on planet Earth, you've been through trauma.
Mm-hmm.
you know you've had to fight for your life. Just the birth process is that.
Right.
You've had to fight for your place in the world. You've had to deal with, unless you came from a perfect family, but most people didn't.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I would love you to talk about breathing a little bit because that's so foundational. And it's so key, such a key component to releasing some trauma, in our body. And so many of us don't breathe well. I know I don't know if you do, but I still have to be super conscious. I'm like, oh, I've been holding my breath, where do I place my tongue? What kind of breath work am I going to do right now just to kind of bring everything right back down? So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I would say I went years, maybe decades of not breathing well either, just because of
Right?
stress. Yeah, and yeah, it is crazy. So I'm deeply into meditation and to breath work, and uh I mean, you could do something simple like go on and check out Wim Hof's 11-minute breathwork thing.
Mm-hmm.
um that's very cleansing. It's very rejuvenating. Doing that once a day, in 30 days, I imagine you would see some shifts going on
I
profoundly.
think so. Yeah.
And then meditation, just where you get still,
Mhm.
and start to turn off those stress mechanisms. It's very elegant if you can work one-on-one with somebody like
Yeah.
myself and turn that dial back, because I often find people, I have people coming to me that are allergic to everything but 5 foods because stress has put them there. People with
Right.
PTSD, people that saw, their husband catch on fire, or somebody that got attacked by a dog and had to go through 6 jaw surgeries. And they're in such a state of shutdown because that alarm system is going off all the
Yeah.
time. I mean, could you imagine if your fire alarm was going off in your house 24/7, 365?
You would
You'd
go
you
crazy.
Yeah, you'd never sleep. You'd be tearing your hair out. Your digestion would go offline. Your hormonal
Right.
system would shut
Right.
down. Your immune system would shut down. So the beauty of this is it helps dial that way back so your subconscious mind can experience peace, bliss, and healing, because that's when your immune system is turned on,
Right.
your hormonal system is turned on, all those healing systems are turned on. So that's why I mean, people with migraine headaches, people who's haven't had a good night's sleep forever. Those are really common outcomes. Pain goes away. I just worked with a guy who had 40 years of back pain from an injury,
Mm-hmm.
not somebody that would normally seek me out.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, when he found out I was an acupuncturist, he was all excited because he's like, okay, well, acupuncture has been helpful for me in the past. And I'm like, well, you're 40 years down the road. You've done this, you've done that. You know how powerful your mind is because he was a Dispenza guy. I said, why don't we just go in and find out what's stuck in there? Because if you break your femur, which is the thickest bone in your body, that should be healed in 8 weeks. I mean,
Right.
assuming it's set properly and not at some funky angle. But that should be healed better than ever in 8 weeks. So I said, something's in the way of healing properly. So let's find out what that is, rewire it. And he was 80% free of his back pain in a month. And
Wow.
I said, are you surprised by that? He says, no, I know how powerful my mind is.
Yeah, it's so true. Like our emotions, everything is so neurological, right? And so it's not your leg that hurts, it's your brain. It's the neural pathways that are creating that pain consistent response. When somebody has like you were talking about the dog bite, and somebody has I had a client who she had she'd been bitten by a dog as well, and she just had that constant pain. It was totally healed. There was nobody could see anything wrong with it other than the fact it was a different color, right? It was a different color, and she just had pain. She wore a tight sleeve on her arm all the time. And until she worked on the trauma of it and released the emotional piece of it, as soon as she did that, she put her sleeve away, she surrendered all of that, and her arm went back to normal color, and she hasn't had any pain since. So
Beautiful.
what happens in the brain when things like that,
Well,
when that trauma is released, like what's going on there, Dr. Tara?
that's a great question. And again, I believe it goes back to it doesn't matter what happens to us, it's our interpretation of ourself, the world, and other people that matter. If you look at Viktor Frankl, who survived a concentration camp,
Right?
you know, he claimed his power through that process. He realized the man's search for meaning. The one thing that you can't take away from somebody is their own personal sovereignty. So if whatever you're going through, you claim that rather than give it up, and that requires trust. And like that woman who uh, at some point she took her power back and decided, this is my arm and I'm allowing it to heal and surrendered to it rather than fighting it. Fighting it seems to be a big problem.
It
It's
is.
like
Why do
it's
you
like
think that is? Why do we want to fight so much?
it's that emotional left brain portion that likes what's familiar and it wants to hide. If there's a stress thing, it wants to fight, it wants to flee, it wants to hide, it wants to take that beach ball and try to push it down under the water.
Mm,
You can't solve the problem, and in many cases, people don't even know what the problem is. There's just that feeling of discomfort, and you want to push that beach ball down. So my meditation teacher taught me, if you're feeling discomfort when you're meditating, just go into the discomfort. And I've worked with people that had severe trauma, military stuff, bad
yeah,
stuff, and they did my process and got beautiful results. But then something would trigger it, and they were like, "Wait, I've got this thing that's back up, and it's fear, and it's just this big scary thing that I don't know what to do with." And I said, just go into meditation, and instead of running away from it, instead of pushing it, instead of fighting it, go into it, go into the very, very center of it and just hang out there and see what happens. And I get a text 2 days later that says that was great. That was the answer.
mm-hmm.
Because again, it's if you're fighting something that you don't understand, you can't see, it's like the monster underneath the bed. If you
Right,
if you give that credibility, it's there. It's you've given it life. But if you just look under the bed and look for it instead of running away from it, you see, oh, it's not there at all. There's nothing there.
right, right.
So
Uh,
it's the willingness and the surrender. I think that's the big key thing there.
oh, totally. I mean, we get ourselves so worked up um, about, things that have happened to us. And, even like, I'll use an example. When I was younger, I had a babysitter, and she made me watch this horror film with her. And
Mm.
it was about a guy who would just like appear in the mirror, like in your bathroom. And I literally mean for years, I could not get up in the middle of the night. and go to the bathroom without being scared. Like I hung on to that. I hung on to it. I hung on to it. And even into my adulthood, after I had my first child, like it was still an issue for me. And I'm like, how come? I'm just surrendering this to you, Lord. I don't need this. I don't want this, blah, 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 blah. But somehow I still was like holding on to that. And it wasn't until I did some really specific work, like, this is ridiculous. And, looking into the mirror and like being in that moment, like you're talking about, and like feeling the fear, but knowing that there really wasn't anything that could harm me from that, from feeling that fear. And I wonder, do you feel like people are afraid of the fear? Does that make sense? Like they're
Yes.
afraid for the feeling of the fear and like what's going to happen to them if they completely gave into it. Like, would their world collapse? Would, you know, uh, their brain implode or whatever it might be? Like, there's just so much there. And how do you get somebody to that point where they're able to feel all of that? Because, a lot of people just aren't there. Like, I really would like to meditate and feel it, but I can't get there.
So if you're doing it on your own, then yeah, just being quiet and going as deeply into the discomfort as you can. My teacher describes it as like, if you go right into the middle of the knot will start to loosen,
Mm,
and he described it as like a flower opening in the sun. That
okay.
is sometimes very difficult to do on your own because it feels like the world's going to collapse. It feels like you're
Right.
going to grow up. I mean, it can feel really like, you're going to get destroyed. So if you're working with somebody such as myself, and you
Right.
can get talked down into that relaxed state and make contact with that, and then once you can see again through proper questioning what it is, why it got installed, what it wants, and what the craziest thing is, it usually wants your safety.
Mm,
It's not there to hurt you. It's there to protect you. It just does. It's like that iPhone 14 operating on iPhone 4 technology. It's
sure.
doing it with the brain and the instructions that a 2-year old, a 4-year old, a 6-year old would have at their disposal. They're not doing it with the tools and the mental state of the adult that's in the room.
Hmm.
So what I do with people is connect with that neurological thing that got fired and wired way back when. Sometimes people go back to the womb. Sometimes people just weren't wanted. Their mother, was young and scared and didn't want to have a baby. And so the baby picks that up, and that's a terrible
Wild.
thing to feel not
Yeah.
wanted your whole life. Or they were adopted, and then they're like, well, what was wrong with me that my natural mother gave me up? And she may have given him the child up for very good reasons, that she just was
Right.
overwhelmed, couldn't take care, and she knew there was a better home option. But still, the baby often experiences, like Eben Alexander, who I interviewed about a month ago, when he had his whole death experience, and wrote about it. He wrote Proof of Heaven. One of the things that he needed to resolve when he was on this experience of being brain dead.
Hmm.
For those of your, to explain to your listeners, he was a brain surgeon who ended up being more brain dead than arguably anybody on planet Earth ever has been. I mean, his brain had turned to pus because of a gram negative meningitis.
Hmm.
Very rare that an adult healthy man would get this, but he had this experience, being in coma for a week, had an experience that was more real than real, came back and wrote about it. But Lost my train of thought there. Why did I come up with him? There was a reason.
Um, I'm not sure.
Ah! Um, okay, now I completely lost my train of thought.
We were talking about how to get into that place of to be able to let go of things. People were,
Oh, we were talking about children who were adopted,
yes,
and
children who adopt.
he was given up for adoption, and even though his adoptive family was incredible, he still had this feeling like, okay, so there must have been something wrong with me that my mother gave me up for adoption. So he needed to resolve that issue. So again, these issues get very deep, and it's just hard to navigate that on your own
Yeah,
because it's
for
so
sure.
deep in the subconscious mind. So if you're working with somebody that can talk you down into those relaxed brainwave states, the alpha or below,
Hmm.
where you're still aware. I can't make anybody think anything they don't want to think or believe anything they don't want to believe, but I can help them see what's there and connect the dots.
Hmm.
And then they can have the realization, oh, that's why this is there. Oh, it's okay for this to go now. It's not relevant to me anymore. It was relevant then, but it's not relevant to me now. It's like putting on a pair of shoes that are ripped and torn from when you're 6 years old. You wouldn't dream of doing that. But if your subconscious mind still thinks that those shoes are yours and they're appropriate for your feet, you're going to suffer with shoes that are too tight.
Right. For sure. For sure. No, that makes sense. So, what have you seen? Like some of the most amazing things that have come out of your work that you've seen people be able to kind of break free from, and then, what's their like life like after that?
Great question. So if you go on my YouTube channel and my Instagram, there's all kinds of stories on there. People had all kinds of different issues,
Okay.
um, like the woman who got attacked by the dog and went through 6 jaw surgeries, and she was living in fear. She had developed a choking disorder, so that every time
Oh,
she ate, that she was at risk of going to the hospital. Her husband had contacted me and said, "Please, can you help her? We don't know what to do." She had three young children.
oh,
So she was delighted because she had, endless doctor's visits and endless this and endless that and pain and fear of more surgeries. So it really just took 2 sessions and, that was done. So
hmm.
no more surgeries, no more pain, no more visits to the ER with the choking disorder. Another gal had seen her husband catch on fire
Wow.
and he's fine, but she was a sensitive person anyway, and it just triggered PTSD and then mold and babesia and mast cell inflammation. She became allergic to all but 5 foods, and I think one of them was salt and another one was olive oil.
Wow.
She did not want to come see me. uh, um, Her choice was either to go to a mental institution because her husband did not know what else to do with her. She's like,
Sure.
they were just exhausted and they were going broke because they were, doing
Like how,
acupuncture,
yeah, so much money spent. Hmm.
neurofeedback, and biofeedback. And she experienced more peace than she had in her entire lifetime in her first session.
Wow.
And then once we continued on, because I work with people over 90 days because we're layered, and it's important to really get. It's like learning a language or learning a sport. You've got to get those new neurons firing and wiring so that that becomes your new normal. The brain prefers a familiar hell to an unfamiliar heaven.
Mm,
And the trick is to reverse those around so that heaven is familiar and hell is unfamiliar. But
like,
that takes a little bit of time, a little bit of processing so that the old neural pathways, it's Donald Hebb who came up with Hebb's law back in 1948. Neurons that fire together wire together. You have to get those to stop firing and wiring together, while the ones that you do want are now firing and wiring together. So there is a physiological change that's going on in the brain.
sure. No, that makes complete sense. Um,
Um,
speaking
and I'll I'll just
of,
mention a couple of other ones. People with health anxiety that were running to the doctor thinking that there was something wrong with them. Typically, these people don't sleep well at night. Sleep increases tremendously. I had one gal from London 9 months ago, who hadn't slept well for 7 years. She was only sleeping 3 to 4 hours a night. She was really starting to lose her mind because sleep is really important. We're supposed to get rid of about a quarter ounce of toxic material from our brain every single night. And if we don't go into those beautiful delta waves, theta waves, and dream states, we don't get the opportunity to get rid of those. That's why people in the
right.
military have terrible PTSD. They really the problems compound without sleep. So she says, Tara, I don't know how you did this. You didn't even mention sleep in the sessions that we did. I didn't have to mention sleep. All I had to do was remove the emotions that were preventing her from sleeping well in the first place.
Wow. Wow. And so when you're doing your work with people, so are you asking them questions so that they're able to dive deep into these types of, emotional places? What really
So
happens?
if you could imagine yourself like just getting up in the morning, you're cognizant, but you're not really awake. You can answer questions. You're aware, but you're just in that drifty state. So that's the ideal state to do this kind of work.
Hmm.
Um, and then so they're aware and they're awake, but they're kind of time changes. A lot of times when we're finished the session, which is 2 hours long, sometimes people think 20 minutes went by.
Sure. Sure.
And people go down to different levels. Some people, they're out. They don't remember a thing when they come back. Others, like, they're like, well, that was just no big deal. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter what you call it, whether you call it hypnosis or whether you call it having a relaxed conversation. It really just doesn't matter because as soon as you relax the brain, you'll get better answers. You
Right.
can't you can't get those answers when you're in a high beta state.
Oh,
So you and
absolutely.
I are in beta right now. People can multitask. I'm aware of what's going on over there. I'm aware of what's going on behind me. That's not the state to drop in and get those delicious answers that are available in your subconscious mind if the correct questioning is occurring.
Right. Is there anything negative to, being in such a relaxed state where your brain can process things? Is there anything negative about that?
So that's a great question. Typically, when we do a session, and I always have people, have a little bit of me time afterwards because you're going to be processing.
Sure.
It's a joyful experience in that it's like dropping a 150-pound backpack that you've been carrying around and haven't been aware of.
Hmm.
It's joyful to see old patterns that aren't serving you and let them go.
Hmm.
That said, it also is a little exhausting because you're having to look at that monster underneath the bed, that
Hmm.
monster that really seems really, 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 really real.
Right? You like know
Um,
it's there.
yeah, it's like, no, 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 you don't understand. It's really real. It can hurt me. It's going to eat me. It's going to swallow me alive. Well, it's really not. And yes, it takes some courage. So, for people who have been through absolute, real trauma, I always say, you don't need to go re-experiencing it. You're just going to review it. So
Hmm.
it's like you're watching a movie. You might see things, you might remember things, you might hear things, you might just have experiences in your body. It doesn't matter. There are no wrong answers. That's what's so beautiful about it.
Hmm.
I don't care if we have a conversation with your left pinky, if that's what your subconscious mind wants to do. Um, the right answers will pop up because the subconscious mind is, it's reliable. It is a supercomputer, and all you have to do is access it correctly, and the right answers will come up. You just connect the dots and then walk the path. There will be a clear path. I make people an audio tape that's custom to them and their journey so that they listen to that each night as they fall asleep. So again, they're firing and wiring those neural pathways to where they want to go.
Right, right. And it changing the way that they think through the night while they're sleeping. Is that the goal? That's why you do it at
Well,
night.
it's to disconnect those old neural
Okay.
pathways that are saying danger, danger, you're not okay, you have to do more, you have to hide, you have to please somebody, you have to do something, you got to do something because we're not safe. You want to disconnect those and start connecting the ones that go, oh, I am accomplished, I am lovable, I am, all these beautiful things that are true.
Right, right, right. Life and death's in the power of the tongue and the rewiring, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
language is very powerful. That's another thing that people realize when they're working with me, because a lot of people are saying things that are just sabotaging themselves so badly.
Yeah, and I don't think we really realize the negativity that we speak to ourselves, until we become really aware of that. Is there a way to, I don't want to say prevent, or, once you've gone through, work and stuff with you, releasing the emotions, rewiring things, is there a way to prevent that from happening again? Does that make
100,
sense?
100%. So
Okay.
once your awareness evolves, once you see how your brain works, you're much less susceptible to having stuff like this. I mean, people are always, when they're working with me, um, a lot of people will change their lives. I mean, if you're in a toxic relationship, you're not going to put up with that anymore. So either your partner is going to grow with you or you're going to go find a new partner. Um, you know,
Hmm.
that's the way it is when you get healthy. If you're in an unhealthy relationship, that's a dance. And
Right.
when you stop doing your part, then things change. Or it might be family members, or it might be people that you hang out with. It might be friends. You're going to up level your way of being in the world, and you're going to demand that you have better quality people around you. You're going to read better quality books. You're going to, watch, if you, good Lord, turn off the television.
Right. Don't do it. Don't turn
But
it.
if you're watching movies, you're going to watch better movies, not going to be the negative, horrible stuff. You're just going
Right.
to be really aware of how you feed this amazing organism that you are. You're going to have respect for it. You're going to feed it well. You're going to take it for walks. You're going to take it for exercise. You're really going to care for this thing because it's going to matter to you so much more once you realize how much more valuable you are than you thought you were.
Right. Oh, that's so good, Dr. Tara. So good. Where can people find you?
So you can go to consulttara.com or nashvillehealer.com. There's a let's talk button. You can fill out some questions and just, get a handle on what it is that you want to
Yeah.
shift. Or you can say, I was listening to your podcast and send me your unzip healing audio, and I will send that to them. It's just a short way to sort of unzip the personality and step out into
Nice.
nothingness
Yeah.
and just
So
experience.
that'll be in the show notes for everybody. Yeah. So
And then I also have a whole bunch of books on my website that I recommend. And I need to update it regularly because there's just so many great books that are out there, and I'm a bookaholic.
me too. I confess.
So people like Byron Katie, I mean, she wrote Loving What Is, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then there's a whole list of resources on there. When I'm working with people, I find out what it is that they most are interested in. So I will give them plenty of homework if they want to, juice up their experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Any final words you want to say to my audience?
There are resources out there. You don't have to suffer. There truly are. And once you dial into the really good, juicy resources, you can catapult your life into so much better quality of living. All you have to do is get 1% better each and every day. James Clear writes about this in Atomic Habits.
Yes.
And you're not 360% better by the end of the year because that 1% compounds on itself. So you're like 24 times better by the end of the year. So you don't have to make great strides. You just have to chip away at the things that are causing you toxic problems, like the little camel here.
Right.
What are your bags that are holding you down? Chip away at those, and then the things that serve you, the things that enlighten you, the things that enliven you, the things that make you more vibrant. Keep doing more of that. And if you want individual one-on-one help, that can catapult you exponentially further and faster. So whatever resources you have, start plugging them into tools that serve you at the highest level. And your life, I can't tell you how many times over and over and over again people are saying, I'm nothing like I was a year ago,
Right.
or 6 months
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
So you don't have to suffer. When the student is ready, the teacher arrives. So get your studentship ready for the tools that are exponentially amazing for you.
I love it. And then you just 10x your life and you keep going from there. It's totally amazing. Uh,
100%.
100%. I love this conversation, Dr. Tara. Thank you so much for taking time. Lots of wealth of information. All of Dr. Tara's show notes all of her information will be in the show notes. So make sure you connect with her. I was on the website the last couple of days, just looking at all the resources. It's absolutely amazing. Her heart is for healing and to see every person who comes in contact with her to thrive and just be all that who they're created to be. So thank you, Dr. Tara. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Make sure that you like, subscribe, and share, depending on what platform you are on. And I will see you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Laurie.